All right, welcome everyone to our virtual meetup for the month of May. Very excited about this one because we have a whole bunch of people here to talk about our working groups, which are key to the SALT project. So I'm your host, Janae Andrus, SALT Community Manager, and I'm here with a whole bunch of awesome people. And we're going to go down a whole bunch of things, but first I have an announcement about next month before we get into the awesomeness that is today. So our meetups are the third Wednesday of every month, which means that next month our meetup will be on June 16th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. And we are going to be going behind the scenes of the hacks. So we will have Tom and Chunga breaking down for us the background of the hacks and how they choose things, how they choose topics. Maybe they'll have some bloopers for us. Who knows? Different things they end up having to edit out. Everything that Tom does wrong. Just kidding. He's perfect, right? That's what we tell everyone. And we're just going to have a blast, really diving into the behind the scenes and then Chunga's journey of really starting to interview Tom on there and how that's all gone. So we're really excited to dive in and do that. Also, we're going to have a second virtual meetup on the same day at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. And we're going to be having Tom present on Config Management 101. And the purpose of this meetup is to have a meetup in the APJ time zone, the Asia Pacific Japan time zone. So that will be June 17th at 11 a.m. Singapore time. So if you want to join 9 p.m. Mountain or 11 a.m. Singapore, we're really excited to be able to have a virtual meetup that goes into other time zones. So really looking forward to that. Okay, so that's June, but it's still May. So let's dive into what we're doing today. We have some awesome speakers. So we have Derek, who is one of our SREs, and he's the Docs working group captain. And spoiler alert, we're saving him for last because we will just pick his brain all day. So I purposely put him last because I think that will trigger a whole lot of questions and conversation. We also have Shane, who looks different than his picture because he cut his hair, and he's our Windows working group captain, looking very dapper. We have Tyler, who is our Item Cloud working group captain, and he actually does a Twitch stream of Item Cloud 3 times a week, if you ever want to catch that. We have Barney, who's a member of our community, and we're really excited to have him here as our security working group captain to give us that rundown. And we also have Wayne, who runs our test clinic, and we're looking forward to getting updates from him on the test working group. And we have Sage, who is our program manager, and hopefully you all know Sage, and she's going to be here to fill in all the gaps and pull it all together because she's really the one that keeps the working groups turning and churning and being all the glory they are. I mean, to be fair, the community does it, right? But Sage keeps everyone together. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Okay, so here's our agenda. We are going to start with Windows. So Shane, hope you're all geared up, ready to go. And then we might skip Item Cloud. And then Sage will spend a little time on formulas and Mac OS for us. And then we'll have Barney do security. And then Sage is going to talk about the release working group. And then Wayne and Sage are going to tag team test working group. I will do a quick thing on Kubernetes. And then we will give Derek time for docs. And we will see if we have time for Q&A at the end. But I imagine that, yeah, we'll see if we have time. Okay, so Shane, oh, sorry, we don't need that slide yet. So Shane, do you have any slides you want to share? I can stop sharing or I can turn the time over to you.
I got slides.
Excellent. We'll let you share.
All right. I'm Shane Lee. I'm known as Twang Boy on GitHub and Slack. I'm a Windows Working Group captain, which was founded on June 18th, 2019. We meet on the third Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you attend one of our working group meetings, you might run into some of these guys. Markus is from Germany. David, I think you say that David, is from the UK. And Joe Ecott works for us, and Chad McMorrow works for us, but that's usually who attends our meetings. some of the things we're working on right now, we're currently getting our salt distribution up on Python 3.8. We've implemented some tests for WinRepo to validate the URLs, and we've made several updates to the Windows installer. Some of the challenges that we are having is we keep having problems with Unicode, which is seems to pop up all the time with Windows, especially for our partners in Europe and other parts of the world where they aren't on Windows, English Windows. We only have one person that really understands the MSI code, and so there's some knowledge transfer issues there that are going to need to happen. And some of the other things is trying to figure out what salt really needs, what are the bare minimums, so we're not shipping a bunch of stuff that may increase the security footprint. So keeping our dependency count as low as we can. So we'd like to invite you to come and help us out on the third Tuesday of every month, because we need help. We have to work with Windows.
That's awesome. I love that.
Any questions?
No, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Shane. We are going to go ahead and go to Sage to walk us through both formulas and Mac OS. So Sage,
Yes.
take it away.
So I'm not going to share too much because I want to give the people who are here some time, but I will share a few things. Formulas working group, salt formulas working group. They're actually called the salt stack formulas working group. You can find them here, which I have this up for you. And formulas, salt stack formulas. Anybody want to take a stab at what's a salt stack formula? Anybody know? Come on.
Stuff to
Nobody's
help
gonna-
you do stuff in salt.
Yeah, it's so chef calls them recipes usually. So they have these, it's like, this is how you do a bunch of different things, put it all together to have an actionable item at the end. That is probably something that doesn't really fit in a module or doesn't really fit in a function. It's something that it's using a bunch of different pieces. And there's lots of people that are meeting with them. And there is another group that is salt formulas that is trying to combine with them. And they have a template formula out here. They meet every other week so it's the second and fourth Tuesday. So if you're not going to Windows, interested in formulas, it's meeting on some opposite Tuesdays. Then, so that's formulas. And if you're interested in formulas, please, please, please join us. They have a ton of work that they're doing. They are very active on IRC and also very active on Slack. Then Mac, I will turn to really quickly. The Mac working group also meets after the Windows working group on the third Tuesday. They are also a very active group, and they do have a project board. I'll show this to you guys. Oh, that's Windows. That's fun. Way to go, Sage. Good thing I'm testing this. So they have a board out here for Mac OS. They have a lot of work that they're usually doing and trying to make progress on. And it's not always necessarily Mac specific. Sometimes it's all over the place, but they're very, very helpful with Mac. And this is a board that we want to work on to make this a little bit more asynchronous, which is what some of the other groups have been doing. And that's all I'm going to say about those groups, unless people have questions. Okay, who's next?
Sounds great. Thank you, Sage. Okay, Barney, we're going to turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, so the Salt Security Working Group, this is a new working group that we just set up. We had our first meeting last Monday, the 10th of May. we've actually sort of been having some discussions over starting it for a few months. We've actually mainly been having those discussions on the weekly community call, which actually anyone listening to this should come along to the community call. It's a great way of sort of keeping in touch with what's going on in the SALT project. We have a proposed charter, which would be good if there's a link in the presentation. If people want to have a look at that, that will sort of fill you in on what we expect the sort of purposes and objectives of the group to be. As we've only just started and haven't actually sort of started on any particular projects, what I'll probably do is just give you a brief bit of background and also just run through what I think the aims of the work group are going to look like. So background. I first started to sort of think a bit more about security within the project around the time of some of the sort of CVE releases that happened back end of last year. I work as a consultant helping sort of customers implement SALT and use some features like SALT API quite heavily. Obviously, there were some CVE releases around the sort of SALT API, and also at the same time, some of those releases had quite a bit of an impact on the community. We saw some issues where some people's SALT installations got compromised because of those issues. The community actually worked really well in terms of sort of rallying around and trying to help people get those issues fixed. But I think it raised some issues around sort of what guidance and communication happened around releases, and also what the sort of documentation looked like for people wanting to harden their SALT installations. Specifically, lots of people getting pointed at the sort of the SALT hardening guide, which has some general guidance around don't expose your SALT masters to the internet, which is good advice, but not really sort of nuanced enough these days, I don't think. And also it became quite apparent from that. It's also been quite easy in the past, certainly for people installing SALT to expose some of the more complex bits of SALT and potentially cause themselves some issues. And also when sort of releases are happening, the core team are obviously sort of really focused on getting those releases out, and also to some degree limited in terms of what details can be communicated during that release process, so that they're not giving out sort of information potentially about those issues. So I think it became clear that there were potentially some things that the community could do to help work towards improving this. So the idea of the working group was to see what we could do in the community, essentially to improve the default security posture of SALT and SALT deployments, to try and reduce the impact of any future vulnerabilities. So I think what we're planning to do is to look at a number of things. We're going to look at default installs, so look at ways in which we can reduce the privilege of the various components of SALT, especially around the master or the SALT master or components that are exposed to the network. Work towards having sort of secure defaults for those, but also take into account that we don't want, we still want people to be able to use the full power of SALT, and we don't want to change how sort of SALT installs work in such a way that we get users just turning off those defaults that we put in place, because that's not going to help the situation. So what we also want to have a look at is sort of documentation, perhaps working on some sort of hardening guides and so on. So where people are using some parts of SALT that increase the attack surface potentially by exposing parts of SALT to networks, so SALT API and things like that. give people documentation to help them actually harden those parts of SALT. We're also looking to be working with the release working group to develop a security release process and the communication plan, so that we ensure that when there are security issues in the future, that people get the information they need at the right time, and they can understand how that's going to affect their systems, and you know, what they need to do to deal with those issues. So yeah, so hoping that so a combination of improving the sort of default security posture, improving docs, and the release process, what we'll be able to do is actually ensure that the impact of future vulnerabilities or insult will be mitigated for as many users as possible, and that will sort of reduce the overall impact of those issues for the community as a whole. So we're really looking for people to get involved. So if you would like to get involved, you can, you know, come to a meeting. You can contact us on Slack or drop us an email. That's me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Barney. Thanks so much. We're really excited about this working group. We're excited about all of them, but security, I think, is our newest one. So is that right, Sage? I think, pretty sure it's the newest one. Yeah, I'm getting a nod. Excellent. So speaking of Sage, we're going to flip back over to you for release. And then as soon as you're done with that, you and Wayne can do test.
If I can get off mute, that's important.
Everyone can mark off their Zoom bingo right now.
Right. Get off of mute. Here we go. So the thing about release is that it is moving very, very quickly, and it has a lot going on with it. Of course, we want to welcome anybody who is interested to be a part of that as well. Working really closely with the security working group and making that process a lot better. So something that I have a real passion for is release management, which makes me a gigantic nerd. And you all really like this because it's something that we need. And I've actually taken to this and want to run with it, but it was actually really going before I got there. And so we have a lot of things that we've kind of put in place already, and you can see this on our board. Here it is. So we have a lot of things that we're working on for goals, and we definitely have some to-dos here for the release process. And we're making this, we're making progress here, and we want to see some more things coming in. And that requires a few more people to be involved, and it's going to overlap a lot with security. So this is something that I think that we've been needing for a long time to really show and expose, make more transparent our release process, and to just get community input and help, because the community actually is one of the reasons that this project moves forward. It is really one of the best reasons that we exist today. You can also see here, Barney also has out here the charter, and these are really great because it also gives you an idea of what the group is about. And so we like to have these out there, and something that I haven't added just yet, but we're going to, is the expectation, so that asynchronous work can also move forward. So if you don't have to attend a meeting necessarily, but if you have a question, you know the different platforms that you can reach out to us, either come to a meeting or get onto Slack or get onto IRC or send us an email. If you just have a question, but otherwise you can just work on your own and see some of the things that are there. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Any questions about the release working group and how much fun it is? We actually have a great time. Should we talk about test? So originally, I will say that, oh, I don't want to go to issues. I want to go back to projects. So originally we had the release working group and the test working group combined. And I think it was just too much work. It was just too much happening in that working group. They wanted to move forward and it was really difficult. So we split it out, and they're really moving very quickly with release and things that we can do with release. And then there's so much to do in test that this board is actually not indicative of all the things that need to happen. This is some things that were on the release project board, and now we're going to put some more things here. And Wayne and I were talking, I think it was last week, wasn't it, Wayne? And we just decided we're just going to start this and we're going to start doing it. So we do the test clinics. Wayne does test clinics on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's actually really moved things quite forward. And so we're going to start on the first Thursday of the month. Instead of the test clinic, we'll do the working group and we'll start filling out this board. And this is really to move forward with testing sort of really broadly. So that's not only like writing tests or migrating tests from run test to PyTest, that's fixing tests that may be broken. That's also getting ready for things that are coming up that we need tests for, or test coverage where we're lacking. It's all of the above, but we will get some things written here so that there is more to see and to do. But of course, join us on that first Thursday. That is at 9 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. For those of you that think that we're on standard time, you're wrong. Just gonna tell you, you're wrong. It's daylight, it's summer. We're doing daylight savings because we're crazy.
Time is hard.
Time's hard. Wayne, do you have anything to add? Go ahead.
No, I mean, I would just guess to talk about testing a little bit. You know, I know that a lot of people find testing hard, and it can be a complicated thing, especially for Salt, which is a huge project, right? Lots of code covering lots of different, I mean, we support tons of different architectures and platforms, and you know, so the laundry list of of things that we can test for is pretty immense. But the whole goal behind testing is to deliver a stable Salt. You know, we want to be delivering the most stable, secure Salt that we can. And the way to do that is with automated tests. You know, they help us to catch things early and often. But that the skill of writing tests is a skill, and so that's one of the things that I do with the test clinic is help us in the community build our skills around writing tests, because you know, if we don't have tests, we have just buggy software, and nobody wants that. So you know, if anybody has questions about testing, you know, you've got a PR that you want to submit, or you're working on and you're just maybe not sure exactly how to test it, or anything like that, by all means bring those to the test clinic or to the test working group, and we will help out. That's what I do every Tuesday and Thursday to because I want us to be better at testing.
And we have a comment in the chat that says the clinic is awesome. I've learned a lot by attending Wayne's and hope to join you again soon. So right on, Wayne.
Nice, thanks.
And that is on the community calendar if anyone wants to join that test clinic as well. Okay, so I will go ahead and do our Kubernetes one. So I'll just briefly share, and I'm going to also put this in the chat. We're not going to spend a lot of time on Kubernetes today, or anytime, because last month our virtual meetup was a fantastic panel on Kubernetes and Salt and how they work together. And also, it's not a whole lot on the working group itself, but if you want to learn more about what we are doing with Salt and Kubernetes, we had a great panel with Gareth and Nick and Tom, and it was really great. So I'm going to share the link to that in the chat. And we just had a really great time. So feel free to check that out. And if you want to if that excites you and you want to get more involved in the working group, then please do. And someone asked in the chat if I posted that today, and yes, I did. So I'm glad it came up in your feed and you got to check that out. It was a really great meetup. So that's Kubernetes. And I'm going to give the floor over to Derek, who is our docs working group captain. And we love our docs, and there's a lot to do. So Derek, take it away.
All right. I just shared a link quick too that I'm dropping in the documentation channel, just a copy of the slides, the PDF, and the links that are in there, just for easy access. And I'll share my screen here. Okay, so the docs working group. What do we got going on? Well, I'm the captain, Derek, and I'm a script automate on Slack and on GitHub and GitLab and elsewhere. And the working group meets right now twice a month, second and fourth Thursdays, 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. UTC. We also have a now and then, it's been a bit rare as of late, is I'll be doing Twitch streams to sort of trying to do a docs clinic type activity. But I am in the transition of a senior technical writer to a site reliability engineer. And so there's a lot of other stuff going on. And so I haven't been really doing as many of the Twitch streams as I could be doing. But we have a lot of stuff going on. And starting with I'm really just going to go over our current goals and what we have done so far, which will be kind of included in there. So the first off is we have a SALT user guide, and the SALT user guide is something that came out of a docs jam where we were converting content created by Alan Kugler of Terminal Labs that was originally meant to be training material for private training workshops. And now we were able to get approval to get that all open and public facing. And we used the docs jam to convert that document all into RST and Sphinx. And it's been kind of progressively improving from there. There are some key players that generally are in the working group. Partly were contributing during the docs jam and kind of continued after that. And that'd be Gary and Jim. I could have their usernames in here perhaps, but if you were to just go to the SALT user guide on either of these, let's say, here's the user guide here, just a preview. Based on your browser settings, it's either dark mode or light mode. The theme, I think, is eventually going to have a little switch option so that you can just have it be dark mode or otherwise. And right now we just have a lot of documentation. It's in a kind of a funky place because it's not right now in the docs SALT project.io portal, as you'd find the other core SALT docs. And but a lot of work went into creating this, and this content had been reviewed before by subject matter experts before we end up converting it. So it's kind of the freshest version of user specific docs on features for SALT. And yeah, this is one of our focuses right now out of the doc sets that we're taking a look at. And the source code is on GitLab, where if you're hopping through here, we have on the bottom left just a link that goes here. Open source repo, it's using GitLab CI for posting to GitLab pages. The long-term goal is to get that into docs.saltproject.io too. Otherwise, the next one too is the SALT install guide. And that's done in a really similar fashion to everything a lot of the lessons learned that came out of the SALT user guide, which was how did we want the repo to be set up? How did we want to use automation, and kind of a very similar contributing guide. This contributing guide's evolved out of the work that came out of the docs jam. And for how to best set up your environment to contribute, it kind of goes through from, you may not have much experience with these kind of tools, and but we use Nox, just similar to SALT, to try to make things as easy as possible. And what's going on here is right now we have the native minions documentation here, including, and we have maybe this placeholders for a variety of other docs. but this is going to continue to grow and be an installation hub, like installation documentation hub that's taking what you see normally on repo.saltproject.io, which has its own kind of funky layout that can confuse people sometimes. And then you have the documentation that is on in the install docs of docs.saltproject.io, where they sometimes may differ from each other or include extra information that the other doesn't. So we're trying to combine those, along with having the SaltSec supported operating system PDF, the version life cycle. We have placeholders there. And that's kind of the in progress work that's coming out of the Salt install guide, and where we could use some help. And I'll be actually creating more and more issues that are simple placeholders of, hey, this is where the docs are for Raspbian, and they should be belonging here. And as we're going through this too, we're improving the doc sets, the tool chains that are used here. So like I said, we have GitLab CI, pre-commit, Nox, RST check, Veil. A lot of these are, I've had a lot of conversation with Pedro and seeing how things are used in Salt's repo, but also what's coming out of the POP project ecosystem, and trying to kind of tailor them to be specific to, okay, take everything we've learned from making those, and then can we add doc specific improvements? And that's why there are tools like Veil as a CLI for kind of like style guide automation, linting really of the result to then tell you, hey, is this in accordance with maybe the Google style guide and the Salt style guide? And some of the work that's been coming out of that has really just been research done by community members, specifically Jim, who's been to all the working groups lately, to just see how can we make use of that. Because the idea would be, can we then take a lot of these learnings in the tool chains and duplicate them out to all of our other repos? Because especially on the POP side, our docs, since we're doing the docs as code approach, they're in all of the repos. So that means the tool chains aren't centralized. But it'd be nice if we could take what we're learning to then pretty much have a centralized repo of, here's our Veil style guide learnings for writing about Salt or POP projects. Here's maybe the best Nox commands have come out for wrangling Sphinx and having the best ease of use with preview environments locally. And then I list Broke there too, because that's a URL validator. Pretty much just goes through the entire repository, not just the RST files, but pretty much any file that may have, even in a comment, a URL link, so that it's just going through and seeing, are these even valid? And there's more coming out of that, because when we look at the long term, a lot of this work is being done so that we're kind of experimenting with the Salt user guide repo enough to the point that, as you see, we're also using the Furo theme, which is a different approach to what you see in the main Salt docs, which is it's a custom theme that we made, is what's in the Salt docs. And that kind of stuff is this kind of thing. We don't want to get in the habit of managing our own theme. I mean, we still have some of the old branding we'd have to go through and update. We have to maintain 2 separate copies of this because one of them is stripped down for Debian usage. So we want to get out of the habit of doing that so that we can make use of one that has a growing community. Furo's actually, that theme has been adopted into the pip docs and into, I believe, requests docs, and a variety of other ones out there. And the maintainer is active in the Write the Docs community. So that's pretty cool. Other thing is improved search. At one point, we really want to take a look at Algolia. I've been keeping an eye on what's coming out of the Salt Formulas working group, because they've been trying to figure out a similar problem: is how do you take all these distributed doc sets, bring them all together, and then also have a good search experience? And Algolia is one of those things that is meant to be able to provide a really nice user experience. Yeah, and so how do we get them together? How do we publish them all into one baseline domain? And then how do we make that search experience better? And so that's kind of the long-term roadmap, is these pieces with these initial guides are setting the foundation for us to start to do things like convert the SALT docs to a new theme, to bring all the docs together into a single portal, that kind of thing. And that's really a general breakdown of everything going on in the world of the docs working group, and what we're trying to do to improve the developer experience and the user experience when it comes to implementing SALT in your labs or production environments.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Derek.
Yeah.
Docs is huge, so I really appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for Derek? Derek, please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, well, on that note too, we do. So docs is huge is also a literal thing, in the sense that we have over 6,000 pages of documentation if it was printed out as a PDF. And on that note, we don't have a dedicated technical writer. So this is also where it's pretty helpful.
Yet.
Not yet. We're working on it. We want to get that in place. And there's so much going on to it, because you have the docs and the doc strings. You have all the docs in the SALT repo. You have docs across all of the POP projects. And so there's just and the SALT formulas working group, like I said, because they have so many of their own projects in their own org, they are also working on trying to wrangle all of their own docs associated with every single formula they have. And so it's a lot of stuff going on, and to try to bring about the most improvements to distributed docs and to make them as high quality as possible. How do you keep refreshing them? You know, like one thing I didn't list on the long term is that there's the ability to have test automation in place, so that you can, like, one thing we don't have really for the SALT user guide is something that is verifying that those SALT commands do what they say they do. And I mean, that would be a really cool thing to have, is that what if there was an update to SALT, and we can then run through the whole SALT user guide, all the commands, and then you could verify that it still works as expected in the latest version of SALT, let's say. Or if someone makes an improvement to the docs and they modify a command, is it going to be doing what they're intending to do? And that's something I'd love to look into also, but haven't been able to just yet.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Derek. And thank you to everyone else who presented, to Shane and Barney and Sage and Wayne and Derek. I said everybody, right? Okay. No, really appreciate you guys. These working groups are so essential to SALT project, because we're able to get so much done, and we really like being able to be project based in them. Sage, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to throw in as we wrap up, since you are so intimately involved with the working groups?
Sure. We didn't list a few here, but I'll just name them really quickly. We have SALT Cloud that's going to be turning into a SALT extension, which is new, and that's going to be really interesting. So that cloud working group is actually going to change a little bit, and about face what they're going to be doing, and that's exciting work because it's new work. It's something we haven't done before, and so it's pretty fun. So people should join us. And then we also have Item Cloud, and Item Cloud is taking what we've done with Item and really focusing on cloud. And those two groups were originally going to combine, but we're going to keep them separate. And the Item Cloud group is going to be mostly asynchronous and not have a time that they meet. So the things that I will say to you is that we're trying to make sure that we're doing this on every platform that meets other people's needs in order to come and work with us. You can come to weekly meetings or monthly meetings. You can see our boards. You can ask questions on Slack or IRC or in issues and in the issues themselves. And you can always reach out to us via email at saltproject@vmware.com.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Sage, and thank you all. We really appreciate it. And please don't forget our virtual meetup that will be next month, going behind the scenes of the hacks on June 16th, as well as our meetup that will be in Singapore time at the same day later that day, going over config management 101. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.